Good morning to esteemed speaker, Professor N. Jayashankaran Sir, Honorable former Vice Chancellor, Kanchi University, participants of the program, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of University of Science and Technology, Meghalaya, we would like to welcome all to the fifth lecture series of the USTM webinar lecture series organized to discuss the modes of teaching and learning in higher education, impact of COVID-19. Before we begin, I would like to request to all the participants to kindly mute their audio during the session. Participants can post their queries in the chat box. Selected queries will be taken up for discussion, taking into the account the time factor. We would also like to request the participants to fill up the feedback form. The link of the feedback form will be shared at the end of this session. E-certificates will be issued to the participants who had submitted the feedback form. I welcome our esteemed speaker, Professor N. Jayashankaran Sir. Though Professor Jayashankaran Sir needs no introduction, but I would like to say a few words in his honor. Professor N. Jayashankaran Sir is rated as one of the top 5 professors of management in India under the merit list published by Business Standard. Founder and secretary of the Ramanujan Mathematical Society of India, he is a rare mix of an erudite academician and a seasoned institution builder. Professor N. Jayashankaran Sir was one of the founders and former Director General of the Bharati Dasan Institute of Management, BIM Trichy, and the former Vice Chancellor of Kanchi University. I would like to now request Professor N. Jayashankaran Sir to kindly start the deliberation. Sir.
Full screen, full screen. Good morning to all of you. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to be part of this webinar lecture series organized by University of Science and Technology, Meghalaya. I think when you look at the profile of all the speakers, it looks as though there's an astronomical conjunction of 14 bright planets. I think it's indeed a matter of great appreciation that University of Science and Technology could organize this kind of a webinar series for the benefit of all the academicians across the country. I will start with the setting of the context for the impact of COVID-19. Before that, I will set the agenda for today's discussion. I will set the context for post-COVID-19 pandemic situation, orientation towards online teaching, factors that influence online teaching, teaching with digital tools and resources, preparing to teach online, setting the stage for interaction, beginning weeks, middle weeks, ending weeks, online collaboration, assessment, risk mitigation, and ending up with blended learning. This is the thought process that I have for today's presentation. I'll start with the context setting. See, everything was smooth, fine, and nice till the middle of March. I think we were in the spring semester. So that's the spring semester we had a big fall. Suddenly, this COVID pandemic situation was overpowering everyone not only in our country, across the globe. And by the middle of March, we had to face this lockdown. And suddenly, students were asked to go home, and teachers could not continue their classroom interaction. So we were simply thrown out of gears. This pandemic situation outbreak violently disrupted the entire academic schedule. 3 months have gone. Next 1 month, we'll have to complete the schedule, complete the syllabus, conduct the examinations. And we didn't know what to do. Suddenly, the campuses became empty. Students have gone to their homes, faculty are at the homes. And how we cope to ensure the continuity of these academic activities, I am planning to use this term emergency distance education. See, in most of the webinars I see, they say we switched over to online learning from the classroom face-to-face teaching. But to my mind, we did not switch over to online learning. We only switched over by force of circumstances to emergency distance education. What do you mean by this emergency distance education? There is a world of difference between an online school and an emergency distance education. So, from the point of view of the students, let's look at what is the difference. Now, from the point of view of the students, they voluntarily sign up for an online school. Presumably, they have all the know-how, equipment, software, broadband, and technical support to be able to engage and participate in lessons taught through electronic means adequately. So you're mentally prepared to go through this medium of instruction. When you are thrown into this emergency distance education, I think all the students were involuntarily signed up for students accustomed to brick and mortar schools with high levels of social interaction, face to face learning, and hands on activities. These students may or may not have the know how, may not have the equipment, may not have the software or broadband and technical support to be able to engage and participate in lesson taught through electronic means adequately. The point that I am trying to convey is if some students voluntarily wants to sign up for an online program, they know what they are in for. Whereas our student, they were in a face-to-face situation, classroom, brick and mortar situation. Suddenly, out of forced circumstances, they had to involuntarily come for this mode of learning and teaching. Look at it from the point of view of the teachers. Most of the teachers in our country, in many universities, they are trained in online education. If you are planning to go for online, you must be trained on online teaching and engaging students, adopting best practices. Even if the training has been slim, online school teachers have voluntarily signed up for teaching via electronic means. They are prepared to design creative and productive teaching strategies for this platform. Whereas in the emergency distance education situation, teachers, they are trained to face education and engagement, which might include technology, but surely include a physical presence, hands-on activities, and an individual interaction with the students. This emergency distance education is designed to provide students hands-on experience with teachers and face-to-face interaction. Of the semester. Learning concepts. If it is on the online school, new content is taught, practiced, and mastered through online school best practices. In the present situation, new content is minimal, but instead, practice and reinforcement of previously taught skills are relied upon. Attendance and grading. I think this was a major issue that most of the universities faced. Preset system for attendance and grading scales that students and their families are aware of and bound to from the beginning of the online school year. Whereas in the present situation, a significant shift in how attendance is taken based on each institution's policy as well as possible grading practice change. See, students are sitting at their homes, whether they are attending the classes with sincerity, with the proper attention, or are they casual in listening to the lectures? And how do you conduct the examinations, assignments, projects? See, these are all becoming very complicated issues with regard to attendance and grading. We didn't have much time to think on these issues. Most of the universities, what they did was if they are in the final year of the program, second year of MBA or final year of engineering, based on the performance during the entire previous semesters, they had to give some score for the students and make them pass. If they are in the first year or second year, you just promote them to the next year. Let's see how to conduct these tests and grading in the next semester. That's what most of the universities have planned. If you look at what Harvard has done, they have just given yes, satisfactory to all the students, because you are not able to go through a rigorous process of evaluation. They just give an S to all the students so that there are no hot burnings for the students. Now, let me look at the ambience under which these students were operating. I call it as the dealing with the new normal circumstances. How are our students placed? Suddenly they were pushed out of the campuses, they have gone to their homes. Emergency distance education spends more significant time at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basic physiological needs, as students struggle with being at home. See, students who are adolescents, they are always young, exuberant, jumping with joy in the campus. Now they are confined to home. They cannot even go out of their home because of lockdown in the entire country. So they are emotionally trying to struggle with being at home all the time. Also, with things such as family strife, food insecurity, loss of job in the family, probably father, mother would have lost the job because of this pandemic. Probably some member of the family must have fallen ill, and probably some deaths also in the family. So, if you look at the circumstances in which the students are operating, not very pleasant situation. Family stuck at home. Actually, one well-known psychologist in Chennai said he is getting a lot more of psychological cases during the pandemic. The domestic violence was very high for various reasons. So the atmosphere in the family is not conducive for the young boy or a girl to be focusing on studies. Families who have new and specific behaviors and requirements when leaving the house, which are socially and emotionally stressful. See, even if you want to come out of the house, you'll have to wear a mask. We all love to show our face to others in the society, but we will not be able to do it because we had to compulsorily wear the mask. You need to maintain the social distance. You can't shake the hands. You can't come anywhere near another human being. You need to maintain at least 5 to 6 feet. And when you leave the home, you feel you're socially isolated, economically stressful. Families who cannot see extended family or friends group, cannot attend marriages of relatives or friends, cannot have more than two people from the same family at the same store at the same time. These are all the restrictions that are posed by various governments across the country, and therefore you find you cannot even meet the extended family or the larger friends group. Therefore, the extended distance education is not dealing with normal family circumstances. Actually, you have a new normal family circumstances at home. A time of great emotional, financial, political, and health stress. There was always a constant fear that we may be affected by this infection. So there was an emotional stress. Many people would have lost their job. Some people have got a cut in their salary, 30%, 40% salary only they were getting. So political and health stress. You see lots of news across the globe what's happening. In this country, so many people are affected, so many thousands died. This also creates a kind of an emotional stress for all the people, particularly young people sitting at home. In this kind of an environment, if you are teaching a marketing course and you want to teach them what are the basic steps in launching a new product, how do you expect the students, boys and girls, to be serious with what you are doing across the net? This is a great challenge. Many faculty members probably could not realize the kind of circumstances, the new normal family circumstances under which these youngsters are forced to live during the last 2 3 months. So this has an impact on their learning capability. This has an impact on their desire to perform well because they have other priorities. As I said, the family is going through a great distress. So the boys and girls who are from our campus may not be able to show full attention to whatever you're teaching in the net. How to make EDE effective? This is a ground reality, but still, how do you make emergency distance education effective? Institutions had to improve the learning experience for the students. and taking into account that we need to be mindful of the following factors. I've listed at least 6 factors where we need to be focusing on specific ideas around teacher accountability. When the students are in the campus, I think it is basically the teacher's responsibility to make sure that the students learn. Of course, in the American system, they use a cliche, nobody can teach anybody anything. That's the stand that American universities take. Whereas in Indian universities, every teacher must be able to teach anything to every student. That is the stand that we Indian teachers take. Therefore, when they were in the campus, it is the responsibility of the teacher to make sure that the students learn. But now, when the students are at home, particularly in that kind of new normal family circumstances, how do you make the teachers accountable for the students' performance? Therefore, the self learning, the desire to learn on their own, autonomous learning, all that will have to be imbibed on the student side. Therefore, the accountability of the teacher in the new situation is a little lower, and the accountability of the students goes up. Grace for all. I think all the students are undergoing, as I said, enormous stress. So we need to be a little more graceful. We can't be too strict with the students, because we need to empathize with the students and also understand the circumstances under which they live. Therefore, you can't reprimand them that they are not showing great interest in your online lectures. So we need to be a little graceful and cautious and thoughtful technology introduction and use of technology. So, what kind of technology you are going to use? I think this is new to the faculty as well as to the students, and you need to be carefully introducing this technology to the students. Also, you need to train the students as to how to use the technology. Lesson plan building. So, you had a lesson plan when you started the course at the beginning of this spring semester. But as you go along, the lesson plan building has to take a different shape. Therefore, what kind of changes you are going to make in the lesson plan and learning outcomes, that we need to make it clear to the students. Number and content of communication to students and families. Now, you need to realize that students are sitting in their homes. Most of the family members will be interested to see how the teachers are teaching out of sheer curiosity, because the father, mother, brother, sister, they have nothing else to do. Therefore, when you are talking online, talking only to the students, even the other family members will be watching what you are teaching, how you are performing. As a matter of fact, I come to realize in schools also they started this online interaction with the students. Most of the parents started watching, particularly the school kids. They require the support of the parents to watch the video on the screen, and they found that some of the teachers, their pronunciation, enunciation, diction, flow of the language, they are not up to the mark. I think when a teacher is teaching in the classroom, the families don't know how you are teaching, but when you are on the online, the whole world will be watching what you are doing, particularly the family members. So most of the family members wrote to the principal saying, but is this the quality of your teachers? They are not able to talk the English language fluently with proper diction. Not everybody can be speaking like Shashi Tharoor with a flamboyant English, because most of us may not be convent educated. Therefore, this is a dimension that we need to understand. Suddenly, you are being watched, not only by the students, by the family members of the students also. So, continued practice of empathy. This is very, very important. Whether they are submitting the assignments in time, whether they are logging in for the classes at the right time, we need to be a little more liberal in understanding the situation under which our students are placed, and we cannot show the same level of seriousness and strictness when they were in the campus face to face. I think I have just listed some of the areas that we need to understand under the new situation. Now, let's move on to the virtual classroom. Now, Somehow, last 2 3 months we managed with this emergency distance education. See, as I said, most of the teachers were not fully conversant with the tools that are available in various platforms. Today there are various platforms available. You have Zoom, you have Cisco WebEx, you have Google Class, you have Microsoft Teams. So many platforms are available. What are the features available in this platform? What are the tools available in this platform? I think most of the teachers were not familiar. So they were virtually giving a talk as if they are in a classroom, and that was beamed over the net. That's precisely what was happening. So now we are in a situation where we know that we are going to teach our students online, because in this semester, when the students are going to be admitted, they will not be able to come to the campus for various reasons. You can't maintain social distance in a classroom. If there are 60 students in a classroom, how do you maintain social distance in a classroom? You can't maintain social distance in the hostels also. So there is a problem in maintaining a regular classes in the campus. We will have to, at least for one semester, at the most for 1 year, we may have to teach the students only online. So this is a time when we understand what is online teaching, what is an online environment. I have just described this in this particular slide. The virtual classroom platform offer a learning environment. So first one, we need to understand what's a synchronous and asynchronous method of teaching. See, there are two broad types in the online teaching. One is synchronous, the other one is asynchronous. Synchronous is actually what we are doing now, real time. I am talking, you are listening. So we are all on the same platform. This is synchronous. So tools enable real time communication and collaboration in the same time, different place mode. Significant bandwidth is required to be effective. So, for example, you can have an audio conference, you can have a video conference, you can have a web conference, you can have a conference through Skype, you can have synchronous chat, you can have LMS. So, the flip side to it is, if the bandwidth is not very strong, probably the stuttering videos will be there and pixeled image will be there. So these are all some of the problems if we don't have good bandwidth. So in asynchronous mode, what you need to do is you give a 10 minutes video, send it to the students in advance. So they will be able to look at your video, probably send them an article, send them a chapter to be read from a textbook or refer to a journal. So all this you need to give the instruction to the students earlier, so that at their own pace they will be able to come to the class fully prepared. So some of the tools that are available in the asynchronous mode, discussion boards, blogs, email, streaming audios, videos, narrated slideshows, learning objectives, web-based training, document libraries, databases, web books, and surveys and polls, shared calendars, and website links. These are all some of the tools that are available for asynchronous mode. So that I have covered in the learning tools, learning material. What are the opportunities for contextual and collaborative discussion? In any teaching learning process, there are two important dimensions which are very, very important. Number one, interaction. Number two, collaboration. Unless you are able to interact with the student, interaction various level, teacher to student interaction, student to student interaction, student to curriculum or content interaction. How do you make sure all these three interactions happen seamlessly? How do I communicate to my students? How the students are able to communicate to me? So this we need to understand. Unless you bring in all these dimensions in the online teaching may not be really effective. Also, you have individual learning and group learning and evaluation assessments, right? So this is the virtual classroom environment. This we need to broadly understand. I'll go through some of them, in detail. Now let me look at the factors that influence online teaching. As a matter of fact, I have put it as factors for online teaching. They are very, very important for face-to-face classroom teaching also. Online teaching is not a typical one-time effort. It is an ongoing process. There are 5 dimensions to strong development. So I have listed 5 developments for an effective online teaching. As I said earlier, all these 5 dimensions are relevant even when you are teaching face to face. Number one, self. Let's all look at our own self as a teacher. What is the personal teaching philosophy and skills that we teachers possess? I need to understand what is my personal philosophy. So most of us are competent on the content. Most of us are MPhils, PhDs, and so many years of teaching experience. We have content competence. But we need to see what is our philosophy when it comes to the question of teaching. How do you want my students to get the knowledge from me? What is my philosophy on that? So I've listed down lots of scenarios in the next slide. So this we must understand. So sit for 5-10 minutes and then try to reflect on your own teaching philosophy and skill. I want my students to learn. I want to be a coach. I want to be a facilitator. What is the role? I want to be a tutor. What is the role that you want to play? Number two, students. I am teaching only for the students learning. Most of us think that when I go to the class and give a talk for 1 hour, I have taught the student. I have taught the student. No. I always used to say, teaching without learning is mere talking. I only talked for an hour. If at the end of the day, none of my students have learned whatever I have talked for that hour in the classroom, I only talked to my students for an hour, I have not taught them. So, you need to understand the profile of your students, how they learn, and how do they retain the information, how do they retrieve that information. So the profile of the students, we always say in organizational behavior, no two human beings are exactly the same. Like no two fingerprints are the same, no two snowflakes on the Himalayan mountains are the same, no two human beings are the same. If that be the case, if I have 60 students in a class, they have 60 different capabilities to learn. They have 60 different backgrounds. Their interest, the pace at which they learn, they're all different. Today, we use lots of technical jargon. Most of the academicians use the term student-centered teaching. What do you mean by student-centered? Ideally, if you say it's a student-centered, the curriculum must be designed for the student. The teaching methodology must be designed for the student. Evaluation also must be designed for that student's capability. Whereas everything is standardized in our academic institution. Your syllabuses are standardized, curriculum is standardized, teaching methodology is standardized. You have a common question paper, evaluation is standardized. While the need of the hour is customization. Whereas what we are doing is just the opposite of it. We have standardized everything. That's why you find, even though the same teacher is teaching the same set of students for one full semester, some students come with flying colors. They get a distinction. Some people get a first class. Some get a second class. Some fail. Despite the fact the same teacher in the same class environment is teaching a course for 45 hours, a 3 credit course, some students perform extremely well, some don't. That's because we are not customizing the curriculum, we are not customizing the teaching methodology, we are not customizing the evaluation system to meet the requirements of each student. In that sense, this online teaching comes in very handy. I'll be able to customize my curriculum, customize the teaching methodology, customize my evaluation also. So this is very, very important because the focus is on students learning. Third one is content. What is the curriculum or content that I'm going to design? So we call it as a program architecture. What are the learning outcomes? What are that are critical to successful learning? So what is the course that I am going to teach? In what way this course fits into the scheme of things in the entire program? See, that we need to understand very clearly. Process, process is actually preparing. How do you prepare for your classes so that you will be able to ignite the learning through effective design? How do you design the classes so that you will be able to make the students learn? Last important dimension, context. How do you create that learning environment that enhances the outcome? So the classroom environment must be conducive for everyone to learn at their best. So these are all the 5 important dimensions. Either it is for face-to-face teaching or online teaching, these 5 dimensions are very, very important. Let me go to each one of those dimensions and try to elaborate. Now, what is the teaching philosophy? I have just written down 9 statements. You can have more, but I have just written as a sample 9 statements. For example, if I am teaching the same module on online, what I would have done is I would have put it as a poll, as a quiz. Or if you are a teacher listening to my talk, I will say, which one of you will select, will describe your teaching philosophy. I see myself as a companion and a guide. This can be the teaching philosophy of one teacher. The other teacher can say, I see my role as a facilitator and a coach. We serve as resources for learning. I see myself as a coach who helps students develop research skills. My role as a tutor. My role as a model thinker. Teacher as a role model. See, in educated technology, this is very, very important. In a face-to-face situation, in an on-site teaching model, what is caught from the teacher is more important than what is taught by a teacher. So you understand the life of the teacher. You live with them. If it is a residential program, you live with the teacher and learn from the teacher. So that's a very deep Gurukul system of teaching learning process. So somebody would like to play that kind of a role. I want to be a role model for my student. My approach to teaching is activity based. I will just give the basic concepts. I'll give them an assignment. I'll give them a project. I'll give them presentations. I'll give them activities so that they'll be able to learn on their own. I'll be focusing more on self-learning rather than spoon feeding. This can be an approach for a teacher in the teaching philosophy. Last one, we want to move from a sage on stage to a guide on the side to a coach in the middle. Now, this is the expression that we generally use in academic parlance. Most of the teachers want to be a sage on the stage. This is possible when you are teaching the students face-to-face, on-site teaching. You are there on the stage, you wax eloquence. You impress the students with your knowledge, with your skills, with your deep passion for the subject and passion for teaching also. You are acting as a sage on the stage. Now, when you are online, this is not possible. Therefore, you must play the role of a guide on the side. You must be on the side trying to motivate the students to learn on their own. Therefore, you must be a guide on the side, and that means you are a little withdrawn from this learning process. Throw the responsibility on the student, create an environment where students will be able to learn on their own, create that environment, play the role of a guide on the side. Some teachers may be uncomfortable with this role. They may take the position of a laissez-faire. They can become indifferent. They will throw all the responsibility to the students. Therefore, I have put a new term. You must be a coach in the middle. You must motivate the students to learn whenever they have a crisis, like a coach in any game. So you have a cricket coach, a tennis coach. Even when you are trying to swim in a pool, there's a coach. If you're going to be drowned, he will take a deep plunge and then save you. So the responsibility of making sure that the players play to the best of their abilities lies with the coach. You can't wash away all the responsibility to the players. Whenever they are not playing well, you must give them the strategies for playing better. See, that is the kind of role I will expect the teachers to take in the teaching philosophy, right? Students, no, if you look at the students who are online learners, uh, they must be motivated for taking the course. They know they are going to do it online, at least from this semester and for this year. Students know full well that they need to be motivated for taking a particular course. Most of the initiative must come from them. They can't expect all the work to be done by the teacher. And prior experience with the subject matter. So, if you are going to take a course on mathematics, physics, or chemistry, or management, you must assess what is the prior experience for these students in the subject matter, because you will have to teach something unknown only from the areas where they know. Only from known to unknown you can take them through. Therefore, you need to understand the prior experience of the students with the subject matter, whatever subject you are going to teach. Third important dimension, where they live, where they study, and where they work. Now, if you are in the classroom, they are all in the classroom. If you are teaching online, even this, some of you may be listening to me from Meghalaya, some can be from Guwahati, some from Delhi, some deep down south in Kochi or parts of Kerala. See, I never know the place where you are listening to me. So, if you are teaching a class, I must know where they live, how they study, how they work. You must intimately know all your students and the circumstances or the situation in which they are learning. Learning preferences and or challenges. What are the learning preferences of these students? That I must know. And what are the challenges or barriers in their learning? That also a teacher must know. Access to and experience with the technology. It's not enough if you understand all this. Also, you must know to what extent these students are comfortable in using the technology. So they must be tech savvy. Most of the young students, they are very highly tech savvy. Only we teachers, we need to pick up some expertise in these technologies. Otherwise, modern students are absolutely comfortable. Only problem is availability of these technologies and bandwidth. Recently, I read one of the studies done in JNU. They have said that 40% of the students, they don't have access to the bandwidth or to computers. No, this is because it's a government institution. Therefore, people coming to study in those institutions may not be economically comfortable enough to own a laptop or a computer and then have this bandwidth available in their homes. That's a problem with some of the state universities. But some of the sophisticated university students are coming from well-to-do families. They are very comfortable in using this technology and experience. Customization to suit the students' needs and background. This is what I said in the beginning. Most of the universities, we have standardized everything, whereas the need of the hour is customization. Even though the technologies are available even during the last decade, not that online teaching is very new, maybe new to us, but it has been existing in some of the developed countries. In forward-looking universities, these technologies were available. They were used also. But we in India were somehow averse to using these techniques. And thanks to the COVID pandemic, what regulatory bodies could not do, what universities could not do, this microorganism COVID-19 virtually have pushed everyone into the new method of learning. I think in a way it's a blessing in disguise. We are simply pushed into it. We have no other alternative except to accept the new environment and the new method of teaching. This is about the students. Now, asynchronous learning. Now, let us look at some of the advantages of this asynchronous learning. You have flexibility of time. When you have shared the material with the students, we used to call it as micro teaching and micro learning. Today, the span of attention for the students is very, very limited. When I started my life as a teacher way back in 1969, I think span of attention for my students used to be more than an hour. It is to be very comfortable. I have no problem in teaching my students for an hour. They will all be listening to me with rapt attention. Today, the span of attention is only 30-40 seconds. They are always distracted. So, you never know when the students have the mood to listen, mood to learn. So, in the asynchronous learning, I can probably take a recording for 10 minutes, send it to the students in advance. At their own pace, they can listen. Even synchronous can be done at their own pace. If all of you are ready to listen to me at 10 o'clock in the night, we can have this session at 10 in the night. If some of you are interested to have a session at 4 o'clock in the morning in the Brahma Muhurtam, we can as well have this session at 4 o'clock in the morning. Time is never a constraint. Whereas in face-to-face, in the campus learning, 10 to 4:30, then classroom availability, place. So space availability is a major problem in the face-to-face situation. At what pace students learn? If a student is a slow learner, he can just play your video twice, thrice to understand the concept that you are explaining in your video in depth. At their own pace, they can learn. If somebody is a fast learner, probably he will listen to your video for an hour for once and then pick up. Therefore, at their own pace, they can learn. They can also participate in the learning process at their own convenience, right? These are all the advantages, the flexibility that one has in the asynchronous learning. In the synchronous, of course, as I am talking, you need to have the mood, you need to have the desire to learn. It has to be at the same time. But the program or the lecture can be scheduled at any time, no constraint of time or place or pace. Now, coming to the course content, all of you must be familiar with the Bloom's taxonomy. How do you design the course structure? You know, the earlier Bloom's taxonomy has 6 levels. This is the knowledge level, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Most of you are familiar with this. So, whether you are going to teach a course at the bottom level, you know, shallow learning, or you want to take them to a deeper level, synthesis and evaluation. This is the way you will have to design the course, looking at the learning outcomes for the subject that you are going to teach. There is a revised Bloom's taxonomy. What happened was, you know, Bloom, he generated these 6 levels, and most of them were expressing it as nouns. One of his students said, learning is a continuous process, it's a dynamic process. It has to be expressed in the form of a verb. Therefore, he replaced all the nouns as verbs. It's remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So I have put the comparison here. Original cognitive dimension in the ascending demand. This is the revised cognitive domain. So knowledge is replaced by remembering, comprehension, understanding, application, same application, analyzing, synthesizing becomes evaluation, and evaluation, new level is creating. How are you creative and innovative in the entire learning process? This is a revised Bloom's taxonomy. So when you are designing the curriculum, you will have to look at the learning outcomes. You will have to see in what way the students will be able to learn at these level. At what level you want them to learn, you know, that you will have to design. You look at the process, online environment, and the tools that are used. Platform offers tools to support the following function. What are the functions that see, we talked about some of the platforms that are available. The platform tools to support the following functions. One is content presentation. There are various formats available. It can be a text, it can be a video, it can be an audio, it can be multimedia. Student teacher communication. How do you communicate with the students? Then group discussion, then collaboration, then assignments, peer review, learning assessments, and teacher feedback. These are all the uh, 7 functions that are broadly used in any teaching learning environment. and they are relevant even for face-to-face teaching or on-site teaching. Now, to accommodate all these functions, what are the tools that are available in the platform? Tools of student interaction in virtual setting, discussion and interaction. As I said, interaction and collaboration, they are the two important dimensions in any teaching learning process. So in the discussion and interaction, you have presentation, then quizzes, polls and opinion, you have chat rooms, breakout rooms. If you have a class of 60, you can break them into 10 groups, each group 6 people. So you can allocate 10 to 15 minutes for a breakout room. How do you form these groups? I will talk about it in one of my later slides. So for 10-15 minutes each group, you can be in Chennai, the other one can be in Guwahati, but you can discuss amongst yourself during the breakout time and come back to the main stream and tell the other people what is it that you have discussed. You don't actually require, because in a typical face-to-face situation, you require syndicate rooms. Supposing you want to break out in smaller teams and discuss, you require physical syndicate rooms. All that's not required on online. Through a breakout tool, you can actually form several groups, make them discuss among themselves, come back to you. You know, this is also one way of reducing the monotony of continuous lecturing. Emotions, hand raising, probably if a student has a doubt, he can raise his hand, gesticulation. Instruction and reinforcement, electronic whiteboard, bulletin boards can be used, asynchronous methods can be used, application sharing, web sharing can be used, content area, real-time discussion. These are all the instruction and reinforcement. Classroom tools, ability to upload and storing documents, auto-populated participant list, using usage analytics. I can actually use analytics to find out how many of you are deeply listening to my talk. You know, there are artificial intelligence tools that are available to find out all this. Then archive option. These are the tools that are available to make sure that the function that we have listed earlier can be accomplished. The process for handling virtual classroom, new to this technology, most of the teachers are new to this technology, and we are likely to make mistakes. Don't worry about making mistakes. All of us learn only by making mistakes. When you were a child, you suddenly did not start walking and running. We were crawling, and then we take a few baby steps with the help of the parents, and then we started walking, right? Likewise, we are learning a new technology, you are likely to make mistakes. As and when you practice, you will be able to gain confidence. So one suggestion is, form a group of 4 or 5 faculty in your own department, in your university, and try out these online teaching models. Among the faculty, you can do that. If you are very close to a dozen students, you choose a module and teach these students online. They will not bother about your making mistakes. So that you should realize the process. There is a lag, pause, patience. You know, generally we have a tendency to speak fast. It's a problem for me also. I have a tendency to speak fast. The technology may not be able to cope up. The lip movements and the audio that you listen may not synchronize unless you have a broad bandwidth. There could be a Actually, at the end of every session, like the way you are going to do, you must take a feedback from all the students at the end of every session. If you see the student is not performing well, you can take a feedback from the student and if the student is performing well, you can take a feedback from the student and sometimes, one student may not be forming a part of any group. That is likely to happen if you allow the students to form this group. Teacher assigned groups. You can assign the students to a particular group. And there are so many parameters that you need to look at when you are assigning the students to a group. You can think of one slow learner, one fast learner, one medium learner. And based on several factors, you can decide this group. It can be homogeneous, it can be diverse, it can be very consistent, it can be fluid. Sometimes, in the beginning of the semester itself, you form a group of 4 or 5. Throughout the semester, the same group will be working. Sometimes you get that can be monotonous also. So sometimes you make the work groups flexible. Now you work with this group for 2 weeks, you find some of the members are not to your line of thinking, you would like to shift to another group. And there's an exchange of members among the group. Even that can be allowed. Some students would like to work independently. They don't want to work in a group. I want to be independent on my own. So I don't want to be a member of a group. If that is the case with the student, we should allow that also. This will make sure that a good collaborative discussion happens. Class participation, assign 5 minutes ahead of the class start. If you are going to start by 11, 10:55, you must be able to ready. Context reading, learning from prior class. First 15 minutes, you set the context. Class content can be for 60 minutes. Focus on the big picture, conceptual understanding, framework for post-class. What are all the activities to be done after the class is over? Post-class assignment, reading material, case studies, blogs, videos, e-books, journal articles, and web references. They will all come under asynchronous mode of learning, right? Post-class closure, setting the expectation. Like I said to my student, when you come to the class, you must come fully prepared. That is my expectation. Close assignment, not more than 60 to 90 minutes. This is that 1:2 rule. To be turned in before 24 hours of the class, immediate feedback. In any learning of a game, you get an immediate feedback. If I hit a ball in a tennis court, if the ball goes outside the court, I know I have not hit the ball properly. If in a cricket it goes for an LBW or my stumps have gone, so I know I have not played the game well. So in educated technology also, immediate feedback is important. If you give an assignment, you need to tell the student within 24 hours you need to turn in the assignments. 24 hours is I'm exaggerating. You can give 48 hours also, but fix the time limit. Can be group work or project based. Facilitate peer learning. See, throughout your online mode of lecturing, you make sure there is an interaction. There is also a collaborative effort. This is towards evaluation. See, in normal face-to-face teaching, what generally happens, you give 3 tests. You choose best two. You give 4 assignments. You give one midterm examination, one final examination. See, these are all heavy stake assessments. If they don't perform well in the midterm, 40 marks can go. If they don't perform well in the final examination, probably 100 marks will go. Here, what you should do is you must have more frequent low stake assessments so that there is no tension for the student. Say, I have given for each assessment for group, 10 marks are given. So 6, 6, 5, 7. So you give several, at the end of every module, you give a small assignment. It can be a multiple choice question. It can be fill in the blanks. It can be a quiz. So you make sure that at the end of every unit, students have understood the basic concepts. So that, when you go to the second module, they'll be able to follow what you're talking. Many a times in the face-to-face classes, at the end of the semester, you realize they have not followed what you're talking. But mid-course correction was not possible in the general face-to-face class. Whereas here, you have multiple tests and students are not tensed up. Because at the end of every class, I am going to take a simple test and it's a low stake only. At the worst, I will lose 10 marks, right? So 10 marks for class participation, and you for class participation also, you find out in during the first 15 minutes how many students have come to the class with preparation, how many of them are actively asking questions, how many of them are actively participating in peer interactions. So if they participate totally, give 1 mark, partial preparation 0.5, no preparation 0. So I given a thing. This is for actually designed by one of my colleagues in the university. So this is for the analytic classes he has prepared. So you can find out how much score I am going to give for the class assessments and how many score I am going to give for class participation. Both are taken care of. Now, this quickly I will go through the risk mitigation. See, these are the risks that you are likely to face. Again, prepared by one of my colleagues in the university. Students are late to the class. How do you reduce this? Students are requested to log in at least 5 minutes ahead of the scheduled time. Classes are scheduled at least 30 minutes apart. Between one class and another class, don't schedule it immediately. You give 30 minutes for the students to internalize what he has learned. So, the way you schedule the classes when they are on site, you need to have a different methodology when you are scheduling the classes online. Students do not go through the pre-class material. First 15 minutes will be used to quickly recap and set the context. Penalty is imposed on non-participation in the class and good preparation is rewarded. See that 1 mark, half a mark, 0 mark will make sure that the students come to the class with full preparation. Students miss the classroom environment. Create an omni-channel experience for the student by having the TV and whiteboard function seamlessly. The faculty use free flow writing on the whiteboard to complement the screen sharing. Time is not sufficient to prepare for the classes. Pre-class material is sent at least 24 hours in advance. In the asynchronous mode, whatever video you prepare, whatever article you want the students to read, don't send them in the 11th hour. If you have a class at 2 o'clock, don't send the material at 11 o'clock in the morning. It should be sent to them minimum 24 hours in advance so that they will be able to read your material, see your video, come to the class with full preparation. Classes are scheduled in a way that at least 2 or 3 days between two consecutive classes. You don't schedule a class 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening. No, online classes will have to be scheduled properly. If you have a class on Monday, next class must be Wednesday, third class must be Friday. They must have at least 2 days gap to assimilate what you have done. It is not only more work for the teacher, there is also more responsible work for the student that we need to understand. You can't hurry up. For example, you can have a 4 hour session together in a face-to-face situation that you cannot do in an online situation. Class is not understood properly. The class is driven through PPT, documents, spreadsheets, free handwriting to ensure concepts are articulated. Emphasis in the class is to explain the big picture and too many assignments to evaluate. This is a problem for the teacher. If there are 60 students, almost every unit, you have 60 assignments coming in. So it will be overwhelming for the teacher with too many assignments. What you can do is probably pull them all together for 3-4 assignments and then evaluate them. Word limit on the submission. For example, if you give a free hand for the student, they will cut and paste and write an essay for 3,000 words. You'll find it difficult to read. Therefore, put a restriction on the number of words. Say 200 words. It has to be crisp, to the point, and so that you'll be able to evaluate within the time that you have at your disposal. Class assignments are bundled and submitted once in 4 or 5 classes and maybe less overwhelming. Students cannot meet the faculty. No, this is another problem with online. Now we have the concept of e-cabin of the faculty, where the student can knock and get attention. Dedicated window for the class, ability to view the student screen and guide accordingly. This has to be tested before class commences. Faculty is not able to see the expressions of the student. This is a problem even now. I'm not able to see the faces of all my distinguished participants in the webinar. I'm just imagining that you are listening to me with rapt attention. Mitigation, this is a certain limitation, can be partially overcome by using chat windows. Have a kickoff class with the students to explain the paradigm shift and the expectations clearly. There's a shift from teaching to learning. This in the face-to-face, you are pushing, is a push model. Now the responsibility of learning rests with the student. It's a pull model. The more the student show an interest in learning, the more the teacher will be able to give from his knowledge base. This sort of class delivery takes more time to prepare and evaluate. Now I am seeing myself for the last 2-3 months. For 1 hour class, I used to prepare for 3 hours. Now for 1 hour online class, I like to prepare 6 hours. I like to visualize a lot more of things in my mind, and PPT. Generally, I always give an extempore talk. I used to tell my host institution, I have powerful points. I'll never use a PowerPoint. That's what I used to say. Now I need to use the PPT. It requires a lot of time. So again, it's a point for the universities to ponder over. When you're measuring the workload of the people, as a lecturer, you may be delivering 16 hours face to face. Now, you cannot deliver 16 hours of online classes. It's almost impossible. You need to relook at the workload for the faculty, for a professor, associate professor, assistant professor. It cannot be because we'll have to measure the workload, as I said, in weeks. So the entire thought process of the university system and higher education will have to relook at the quantum of work done by the student, quantum of work done by the faculty. We need to rework on the entire workload concept. Having lesser classes per week. Don't have more than 2 classes in a week. Have the syllabus structured as minimum. Some minimum you must have and some bonus. If you have the time, go for the bonus. Otherwise, stop with the minimum. I have also in my presentation, I have some bonus at the end of the session. Minimum I am going to cover. Ensure the minimum gets delivered. Work on the bonus if time permits. Syllabus is not consistent with other campuses. If you have multi-campuses for a university, you need to see whether all the teachers are on sync. You are teaching online from your campus. You may have 6-7 campuses if it's a deemed university. Whether there is a sync amongst all the campuses, that's a issue to be sorted out. Plan for group evaluation for the final examination as per university guidelines and campus director instructions. Online class is not yielding results. Poll to collect students' perceptions and feedback on a continuous basis and encourage them to be open immediately if something is not working. See, open discussion is very, very important. Now, I've almost finished all the facets of an online teaching. I started with the post-pandemic situation. We moved on to an emergency distance education mode. I'm giving a different terminology. It's an EDE mode, emergency distance education mode, somehow managed the last 2 months of the fall semester. Now we are planning for the next semester or the next year. That means we'll have to go for online learning, because most of the students will continue to be at their home and we will continue to be operating from our homes. But this cannot go for long. There are pluses and minuses in the online teaching and on-site teaching. Can you take best of both the worlds and come with a blended learning? That is precisely what I have shown here. My surmise is probably after 6 months or 1 year, most of the faculty will have to move towards blended learning. You're choosing the best of both the world. Students will be in the campus. Probably instead of spending 6 days in a week with a student, you will be spending only 3 days with the students on site, 3 days online. Even though they are in the campus, you may not be able to directly interact with them. One advantage is you can almost double the intake. I think my suggestion to the regulatory bodies, they must be able to optimally utilize the space available. Only 50% of the class is profitably utilized because I am not engaging all the students for all the 8 hours for all the 6 days. I'm going to use them only for 3 days in my campus. Remaining 3 days is going to be free. Therefore, you can increase the intake. In a way, this will increase the gross enrollment ratio also. Now, what is a blended learning? It's a formal educational program in which students learn, at least in part through digital learning, with some elements of student control over time, place, path, and pace. That is on the digital side. At least in some part, a supervised brick and mortar location away from home. And the modalities along each student's learning path with a course or subject are connected to provide an integrated learning experience. I think Harvard professor Clayton Christensen has pioneered this concept of blended learning. I'll just give you the models and stop. You have a rotational model, you have a flex model, you have a la carte model, and an enriched virtual model, where you have a blend of both brick and mortar and online learning. I think we'll plan another webinar on the nuances of how do you plan this blended learning or blended teaching. I think we may have to master this after a year. So even now, we must be able to move on to what are the ingredients of a blended learning. Now, from emergency distance education, from face to face to emergency distance education, we are moving to online learning. We'll be moving ultimately to blended learning. And with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. My contact details are professor.j@gmail.com. Feel free to raise all your doubts even after the seminar is over. Feel free to contact me at any time. I will be more than delighted to convey my views on the doubts that they have raised. I would like to thank the Honorable Chancellor, the Vice Chancellor, the Registrar, the Administrative Staff, and the entire faculty of USTM for giving me this opportunity to interact with all the distinguished participants on this pleasant morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a detailed and wonderful speech and deliberation of yours. There are a lot of questions coming, but due to the time constraints, I am picking only one question for you, sir. And the question is, in this online mode of education, whether these native language students will face any difficulties.
Not clear, not clear. Can you repeat?
So I'm asking, in this online mode of education, please, whether these native language students, those the students who are from the regional language background, whether they will face any difficulty.
No, actually, today the language is not a barrier at all. Most of these modules can be translated into the regional language. Even if you look at the SWAYAM platform, the other day AICTE chairman was saying that most of these modules are available in the regional language, available in Hindi, Malayalam, Telugu, Tamil. So today the technology is available. It can be translated into the local language and you'll be able to reach out to the student. That's an advantage of online learning. True. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so very much, sir. Now we have almost come to the end of this session. I would like to request Dr. Reshmi Rekha Barua as Associate Professor, USTM, to present the vote of thanks.
A very good afternoon to respected Professor N. Jayasankaran sir, former Vice Chancellor of Kachi University, Mr. Mohbubul Haq sir, Honorable Chancellor, University of Science and Technology, Meghalaya, panelists, participants of today's webinar, ladies and gentlemen. In this beginning, I would like to express my profound gratitude to our esteemed speaker of today's webinar lecture, Professor N. Jayasankaran sir, for sharing his knowledge regarding today's topic. As we know that offering high quality relevant education and widely accessible higher education is a fundamental goal of higher education institutions of India, And these institutions have been constantly engaged in achieving this fundamental goal, both individually and collaboratively, even in this COVID-19 crisis time, which is really a big challenge for us. Sir has explained very well how to cope up to ensure the continuity of academic activities when COVID-19 pandemic outbreak violently disrupted the academic schedule over here. He has explained many important factors related to this, like importance and orientation of online teaching, factors that influence online teaching, teaching with digital tools and resources, etc. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for your very interesting and knowledgeable lecture. Thank you, sir. I would also like to convey my heartfelt thanks to our Honorable Chancellor, Mr. M. Hawk, sir, without whose support we would not have been able to organize this webinar. Sir keeps telling us that at this crisis time of global pandemic, how e-learning and digital media can facilitate more active and problem-based learning to encourage greater student engagement and leads to better learning outcomes in higher education in the country. We are extremely grateful to Dr. Mridul Hazarika sir, Vice Chancellor USTM, Professor Sohail Sabir sir, Pro Vice Chancellor USTM, Registrar, Academic Registrar, Deputy Registrar, Director Student Affairs, OSD USTM, and faculty members for giving us the moral support and continuous guidance to conduct this webinar. I'm extremely grateful to all the panelists present here for smooth functioning of the webinar. I'm very grateful to all the participants for attending this webinar. I'm very sure that all of us have learned many new things from today's topic. If there is one big thing that COVID-19 has taught all the academicians and students is the online mode of teaching and learning, and it is the core capabilities of every single institution of higher education for better performance. I would also like to say thank you to all the administrative and technical staff for smooth functioning of this webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rashmika Barua. Once again, a very heartfelt thanks to Professor Dr. N. Jayashankaran sir. I hope our all participants have noted down the email ID of Professor Jayashankaran sir so that they can keep in touch with him and can send their queries to him and get the clarifications. I hope our all the participants, request to all the participants to submit the feedback form by today midnight. And once again, from entire USTM family, we are very thankful to Professor N. Jayashankaran sir for his wonderful speech. And we'll see and meet all our participants in the next webinar, which is the on 27th of June at 11 a.m. at the same time. The esteemed speaker will be Professor K. Rao sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Mizoram University. Once again, thank you to our esteemed speaker and everyone for this wonderful webinar session. Thank you. Have a nice